Hey everybody, and welcome back to What Does Jesus Teach? Today we're continuing the series of End Times and Revelation, focusing on the second part of the series, which is the pre-tribulation errors. And today we're going to go into the Doctrine of Imminence error. Let us go in. Alright, so here we go. Alright, so what is the claim made by pre-tribulation? Again, this is a generality of the majority. That after the day of Pentecost, Jesus could have and still can return for his church at any moment. We know this because before Jesus said no person knows the day and the hour. That proves an anytime rapture. This is called the Doctrine of Imminence. In the prior session, we already discussed that a few signs need to take place before the rapture can come. Today will be somewhat of a continuation of that, but exposing the error from a different angle. Let's begin. Alright, so two scriptures that are typically used for this. The first one is, or the first main one is 1 Thessalonians 5:2. It says, "For you yourselves know full well that the day of the Lord will come just like a thief in the night." And now, the thing is, we did talk about this in one of the earlier videos, but we did discuss that in this passage, it's a description of how Jesus arrives, not in relation to the when. So it has nothing written that speaks of the when, but many take the how and try to forcing it to be about the when. Yet, even if this is about the when, it says nothing about whether or not signs must first come, or that it can be any moment, making this a neutral passage regarding this specific topic. We discussed before already how the thief in the night references in a prior video. So again, it's mostly bad news for the unbeliever. It has nothing to do with believers. At least not as good news anyway. So that's not for us. The second passage, Matthew 24:36 says, "But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father alone." Now, the second passage is always a display of forcing scripture to mean something it doesn't say. As black and white scripture, Jesus is saying that in Matthew 24:36 that nobody knows the day or the hour. I agree. Nobody does except the Father. Yet, what does this have to do with whether signs need to be fulfilled beforehand or not? Where is it here that says that because no one knows the day or the hour, then it can come at any moment without anything preceding it? It doesn't. It just says no one knows the day or the hour. That's all that it says, and that's all we should look at. But let's look at this in a little more detail. All right. I'm not going to read this entire thing. This is from Matthew 24. And the section here that scripture I just read comes from is there in the purple about the no one knows the day or the hour. But I want to demonstrate something by looking at these 2 or 3 passages that you see on the screen. Again, in the purple box, you'll see where the passage comes from, Matthew 24:36. And it is about the rapture, and I completely agree. Jesus is talking about the rapture. But we'll see why it's important to point out exactly where this is located. Okay. Now I want to point out the context, which is about the coming of the Son of Man, which is Jesus. Now you'll see up above, verse 36 and verse 30, where it says, this is about the Son of Man coming in the clouds. And then after verse 36, it's the coming of the Son of Man. And, verse 39, it's the coming of the Son of Man. So we have in verses 29 to 31, Jesus is describing the final signs that take place before his return. We talked about some of that in the prior session. In verses 30 through to 35, he provides an analogy that in the same way we can see the sprouting of leaves on trees to recognize summer is approaching, the signs referenced by Jesus tell us his return is approaching. That doesn't give us an exact day and hour, but a sign that he is now soon to come. In verses 35 to 41, Jesus states that no one knows the day or the hour, but only the Father in heaven. Then he provides 2 references regarding his return. All of Matthew 24 is about the return of Jesus for his church. Now, let's take a look at some how pre-tribulation teachers typically break this out. All right. You'll see the two sections, blocked in yellow and blocked in green. Um, Most pre-tribulation believers that have some level of study in this, or that they've accepted the teachings of it, believe that um, the verses in 29 to 31 have nothing to do with the rapture, but rather the return of Jesus at the end of the 7-year period, usually pointing at the Battle of Armageddon. Then at the same time, verses 36 to 41 are said to be all about the rapture and nothing to do with the coming of Jesus in verses 29 to 31. I wanted to show the inconsistency here. I mean, no person that reads this straight would ever think these are two different topics unless someone first teaches you they are two different things. If we walk through this passage, you see Jesus points to the coming of the Son of Man in the entire passage. Now remember that headers are not in the original scriptures. Those are added by translators in their attempt to help organize the topics. But even with those, we don't see Jesus changing topic. If a person reads verse 36 in isolation and says, regarding the day and the hour, so the natural question, if you don't make it to verse 37, you're like, wait, the day of hour of what? He must have said something. Let me kind of go back. So like in any book, a person will go backwards to understand what a statement, like this is about. If you look at verses 32 to 35, it says, he is near, right at the door. Okay, but who is he? And what is he talking about? So we have to go backwards a little more. When you get to verses 20 to 31, it states about the coming of the Son of Man. Okay, now we know what the day and the hour are about. And then back to verse 37, Jesus says the coming of the Son of Man will be, and so on and so on. So it's a very plain error of taking someone so continuous by Jesus and forcing into some of the doctrine that Jesus never brought up. I mean, just simply from a grammar view, he's talking about here, he's still talking to the disciples that asked her a question about when he's returning. He says, after the tribulation of those days, the sun will go dark, the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall. Then the sign of the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky. The tribes are more, and they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds. So on and so on. Then in the middle, he kind of says, look, just like in the summertime, when you see the branch becomes tender, or the leaves start sprouting, that summer is near. Now, he didn't say that what the exact day summer begins, right? But that it's nearby. So you too, when you see all these things, recognize he's right at the door. What things? Well, after the tribulation, when the sun goes dark and the moon goes, he just finished saying, he says, when you see these things, he's right at the door. What things? The things he just talked about. But about the day and the hour, no one knows. Well, that's interesting to start with, like a but, and about the day and the hour. The day and hour of what? The coming of the Son of Man. See how simple it is? It's just to put it together. Nobody would even think about breaking this apart. But pre-tribulation, a lot of teachers will say, no, this bottom section, this is a different thing than the top section. But Jesus never changed the subject. So it's a really foolish thing to do, but I get it. If it's taught that way, you just kind of receive it that way. You put on those lenses, and then you recognize it that way because someone told you. But nobody reading this straight would think that. All right. Now, let me ask you if you've ever heard or read someone making a statement like this. I mean, not this exact statement, but something that's similar to this. Things are so bad right now that I know the return of Jesus is coming soon. Or, Jesus is soon to come due to how crazy the world has become. Or, whatever. There's any number of ways you can make this statement. But all in all, the person is thinking about how evil the world has become. And suddenly it's like, man, Jesus is man, he can't be too far away now. Have you made a statement like this before? And nothing wrong with the statement, but do you realize that anybody who makes such a statement has just confessed there are signs or things that have to happen before the return of Jesus? A person that makes a statement like this is showing you that visible signs of the world's decline is the reason he or she feels they know the return of Christ is near. Therefore, the person is already confessing the Lord could not have returned before these visible signs have shown themselves. It is a contradictory statement to make if you believe no signs are required for Jesus to return, but then you make a statement like this. So anybody who makes this statement proves every time the person believes the world needs to get this bad to know Jesus is soon to arrive. This disproves the doctrine of imminence every time a person makes that statement, whether the person realizes it or not. Again, I'm not saying the world having to get this bad is a biblical sign or not. It's just that when somebody says that, they're basically admitting without them they even realizing that that this doctrine of imminence pre-trib teaching is already invalidated, because they're using the state of the world today as something that tells them that Jesus has got to be coming soon, which means they're admitting that this had to happen before the rapture could come, which means the rapture could not have happened at any point in the past, per their own thought process. All right. I won't add all the scriptures that we discussed earlier in the series because that talk about what could help prove this, because I don't want people taken out of context, just throwing scriptures out there like that without getting the full background. But again, if you haven't seen the series in the beginning, go back to the beginning, as those discussions give even more reason for the doctrine of imminence to be false. I'm simply giving the supplementary ones to the things that maybe I haven't specifically pointed out in this series so far. With that said, God bless you. Have a wonderful day.